Yeah. So what
I
you're
really
looking
like that cover, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's like you were reading my mind. So yeah, the cover, as you know, everybody chose it from the book. People in the book chose the book cover, and the artist had taken 42 photos for years and years. Actually, it's 84, and she put a front and a back from all these pictures she took. A lot of them were from China. Yeah, they're
Oh, I thought these are the ones people were sending you. This person did all these themselves?
yeah, from years and years and years of collecting.
Wow. Is that because of the movie or the book, or is because you wanted it to happen?
I'm going to be interviewing her on the 20th, and I will ask her that question. That's a really good question. I don't know. But
I
it's
mean,
not.
as soon as I saw 42, I figured it's because of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it
Yeah.
could have meant something else.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think it's Asian related. She took him in Asia because
Uh,
in Asia, when you split the number, it can mean death. So actually, 42 is an unlucky number in Asia.
yeah.
I don't know if that's that, but it could be because of the book. I'm going to ask her. Thank you. I got a good question for her now. So see. This is the logo. I'm using it for the presentation of your interview, JC. Uh,
Wonderful.
yeah, so thanks for joining. And let's get started. This is the award that you received. You received it in the email, correct?
Yes.
For your story in the war category. Yeah, I remember the story. It was pretty gripping. But why don't you remind the viewers? Oh, they don't know your story. So why don't you share your story with the viewers from here?
You mean like who I am and all that?
Oh, well, this story. Why don't you share it with viewers?
Oh,
Yeah, if you'd like to.
yes,
Otherwise,
yes, yes,
wait for the
yes.
book.
Joe watched steam envelop the catapult as an F-18 left the flight deck. Bombs he attached to it would be dropped on a distant enemy. Joe wept upon reading his mother's email that night. Did you bomb that hospital full of kids? And of course, I thought of that story because of my own life working on an aircraft carrier.
Oh, so it comes from reality as well.
Yes, I would see bombs going on there and they would go off and then they would come back without the bombs. And so you knew something happened in the middle.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's a story there too that people should know because there's all these issues going on beyond the money that people get for war. Yeah, so I think stories like yours need to be told, even bigger ones. Yeah, and
Well,
40.
there's going to be a lot of Gaza stories coming out, let me tell you.
Yeah, you're right. But let's go back to your story because I want to know about your biography. How about you
Okay.
share it with us? By us, I mean people viewing it later.
Okay, I do have my 42 word biography. I find those things challenging, the 100 word contest or 50 words or 500 and getting exactly 42, I found it a fun challenge. All right, reading my bio, Jay Cannon grew up in the projects, worked in the flight deck of aircraft carriers, became a programmer in the US, England, France, and Sweden. After retiring, Jay became a congressional staffer and later moved to Richmond, where he writes science fiction. So this must have been a while ago because Richmond was 2 cities ago.
Oh, okay. Well, if you'd like, you could send in an updated version and I'll try to add it to the book. I think that there's still a little time.
Oh,
And
I would just change Richmond to DC and I can do that.
okay. I'll just take a note to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But that gets us into where you are, which you said was DC, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess it's like you're psychic and you know what questions are coming next. Uh, let's tell you what, why don't we get into your writing space? Where is that?
It's actually where I am right now. I
Oh,
have this cool coffee table in the living room. Hard to show it, but the top lifts up and comes towards you on these springs or something. And so it sort of lifts the table up so you can actually write. So at one point, it's a coffee table where you can have drinks or maybe a little snack. And then if you want to write, you lift it up to typing level.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if you can show.
So it's a
Can you
movable
see that
desk.
movement?
Yeah.
That's so it comes closer to me and then higher, and
Hmm.
then I can start typing and then move it out of the way. And it's also storage space underneath. A
Hmm.
really cool table.
Yeah.
Someone suggested I get it. It's not my idea.
Hmm.
I'm just
Sounds
not a
like fun.
homemaker.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun table. I'll have to look into those. So,
And so most of my writing is here, and sometimes I'll sit in the bean bag, or sometimes I'll sit in the den by myself. There's nothing in there but a chair and an ottoman.
hmm,
And if I know I'm going to write like an entire chapter or a couple of hours, I'll just sit there and just crank away at it.
hmm, it's a great idea. Who are you writing to when you do that? Pardon the pun.
Um, Most of the ideas come out of my head, and I try to write what I think is enjoyable and even humorous. I'm really sort of a snarky, sarcastic kind of guy, and that sort of comes out in my writing. And one of the things I don't like is just reading dry science fiction that seems like a textbook, you
Hmm,
know?
yeah.
Because bad things happen to people all the time. They trip, they make mistakes, they say the wrong things, and I want that to come out to have the characters be more human.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
it
know?
really fleshes out the story better too when you do that.
Yeah, and so I always do, and I always try to put one poop scene because it's weird to watch a 3 hour movie and no one ever goes to the bathroom. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, how are they holding it?
Hmm.
And they'll get up from bed and say, "Oh, I need to run to work," and they'll just jump in the car and drive off. Everyone's got to pee when they wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
typically, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess when they're doing action movies, they don't really want to do any of that dirty stuff.
Yeah, but to cover all my bases, I tend to get sensitivity readers.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, if I'm writing about gay scenes of the medical industry or the legal industry, then I try to get one of those SMEs, subject matter experts, to read through it and tell me if I got the language right. In DC, for my last book, Killing Heroes, I got one of the police officers to tell me what it's like to really arrest somebody.
Yeah, it's better to do research instead of just assume what it's like, which
Yeah.
a lot of people fall into. But it's good that you're going out there and asking the people who do it. Yeah.
Oh, so I mentioned earlier genre, science. I typically only write science fiction. And my last book, I tried to write a crime drama, and
hmm.
it was just boring to me, so I threw in an alien.
Yeah, that could definitely make it more fun. Just Hmm. Yeah, I actually retold a story about my eight back operations by making it aliens who did the surgery, and
Yeah.
that ended up in some Poe anthology. They laughed about it and thought it was hilarious. Because I was fixed like aliens must have done it. Like, so I hear you with throwing in aliens. It does make it more fun.
Yeah.
Hmm. What's is there a writer out there that you want to meet?
Um, S.A. Cosby. I know there's a lot of great famous writers these days, but he sort of came out of nowhere. I don't want to say left field because that sounds like a pejorative, but and he was also in Virginia the same time I was there. I was in Richmond, and I believe he's in Newport News.
Hmm.
And I attended some of his book signings, at least online, because that was during the COVID period.
Oh,
And I found his writing just flowery, just effervescent. It's like you were jumping into it. And it's really not my genre. It's not science fiction at all.
he
But
does
it's
noir.
like a slice of life.
Yeah.
You feel yourself, so yeah, I have a cousin who lives like that, or an uncle who lived like that, and that's the way it was. And so he sort of gives you behind the scenes look at that life, which is sort of cool.
Yeah. It feels like he was living the story. I've read a few of his things. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a writer that people should read about if they haven't.
Yeah,
And
and he gave me a blurb for my last book, Crazy Rich Aliens.
oh, really? Great. That one? I'll have to check it out. Just taking a note. All right. Let's look at the next question, which is about speaking of your writing.
Yeah.
What's something you want the human race to stop doing? And it might even appear in your stories for all we know.
Yeah, I find myself turning into a curmudgeon. You know, be, be, and I watch politics a lot, and so they talk about the big issues that affect people. But walking around in DC, I live right near the National Mall,
No.
and to see thousands of tourists coming every day and then just throw trash on the grass, the National Mall, which is the symbol of our country, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And they're just throwing cups and cans and just paper waste all around. And I live across the street from FDR's monument. He has a little, he said, all I wanted was this little bitty block on this grass in front of the archive building. And I was like, that's sort of a strange request from a president who saved us from World War II.
Yeah.
And then there's empty bottles and trash from him. So it's in front of my place. I tend to pick that up because he's my guy.
Hmm.
But the rest of it, I find annoying. And multiplying the excess, people talk about pollution and lack of water and other resources. And I said, well, there's too many people on the planet. And people say, oh, we can handle this. Then there's billions of tons of plastic in the ocean. It's, oh yeah, we can do this another 10, 20 years. It's like, no. And then stop trashing the environment is my second biggest thing. And people who idolize billionaires and they want to be a billionaire versus I want to have an amazing career, or I want to give back to society, or I want to invent this fabulous thing that no one ever heard of. It's always money, money, money. How do I make more money?
Yeah.
And to me, that leads to harming other people because if you're taking it all, someone's not getting it, like a decent minimum wage, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And I do try to sneak these ideas into my stories.
Really?
So I talk about excesses.
Hmm.
My current manuscript really focuses on that. It covers the pandemic. And I sort of hate all these pandemic movies and shows since, COVID came out. But this one sort of crept up on me. And it started off as preserving ancestry, which meant preserving all those home remedies your parents and grandparents used to give you when you were sick as a kid.
Hmm.
But you got to think 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, is when there were humans. They didn't have CAT scans and X-rays and doctors to run tests on your blood.
No.
They had to figure out by touching you and looking at you and then finding the right herbs to save you.
Yeah.
And once we modernized, we said, oh, that's just crazy stuff from some witch doctor. You don't want any of that.
Hmm.
you, you want Moderna's next vaccine, you know? They make more money off it. And I think that's why they really suppressed marijuana for so long, because it helped people with so many different things. And say, why is it illegal? It in my mind, it's safer than alcohol as far as how it impacts the body and the brain and trying to drive. I mean, when you're stoned, you don't want to drive. You
No.
oh, but I and so my last book, it talks about how the pandemic was saved by using someone's old grandmother's remedy
Hmm.
that was passed down from Africa.
Hmm.
And people don't realize so many things come from like watermelons, chickens came from Africa.
Yeah.
Like why did they like watermelon and chicken? Well, that's where it came from. We ate it all the time. And so it's funny how some historical things, stereotypes come from some past reality, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. That's a pretty interesting point, huh?
So if you really want to know what I want society to stop doing, just read my
Yeah.
books.
Oh, yeah, that's a good tip. What about your editing process?
That's a tough one. One of the most annoying things for me about the writing process is you have to read your own book over and over, and every time I read it, I find something I missed, or I find something I want to change, and lead to a question someone asked me is, how do you know when you're done?
Oh,
And that's a tough question because every time you read it, you want to add something else.
hmm,
And so that's typically my process. I type in everything in as fast as I can, and I try to be good at it. I mean, I don't want to intentionally make mistakes, but it happens. And I get through a chapter and I go back and fix a chapter, and then I do two chapters and so on like that, because it's not just grammar, it's continuity. Did I use the same guy's name?
yeah.
Did I spell it correctly? Did I get the day right? Oh, trying to put day, and I stopped putting days to the weeks and months and seasons because it's like, this guy's outside in a t-shirt. Wasn't it just winter?
Hmm,
And so I try to avoid doing those kinds of things, or I really focus on sticking to one season.
hmm,
And after I do that, I give it to some close friends to just read through it.
hmm,
You know, they're always wanting to see what I'm writing next. And so I send it to them just to get their high level thoughts on it.
hmm,
And then I'll send it to a SME because there's always some area that I'm writing about that I don't know enough about. And so I send it to that person or people
hmm.
who would give me more background information.
It's a good idea.
And then I send it to a professional editor,
Hmm,
and then he goes through it, and then I send it out.
hmm.
That's it. And then I read it and I find something else wrong. You
Yeah.
know, it, I don't know if I've ever written a perfect book. I mean, one that I was satisfied that I didn't make any mistakes.
Hmm,
You know, I mean, just a little grammatical thing. Sometimes it's a comma or a period or something stupid like that. But
hmm,
yeah, I think everyone should use a professional ed. I've read books that really, it's just like they were so awful. You knew they did not have a professional editor, and it was unreadable.
hmm.
It was just unreadable.
That's too. Hmm. But yeah, your work always looks really organized when I've checked it out. But I'd like more time to read. But yeah, yours is on the top of my list because I've looked through
Yeah,
some of the work you've done. I really like your organization, and
thank you.
it kind of maps with how I like structure when I read a book. So
Well, you'll love my next book. It should be out in February.
yeah, and I think like any viewers would probably like it too if they're really into organization. But
Hmm.
speaking of organization, I really want to get to your writing outline process.
Okay.
I didn't write this, so I don't know why it says this. It's probably another language that means outline or
I
something.
That's what I thought. I thought it was like writing outline in another language.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you got me. It's AI generated.
Oh, be careful, man. They'll come after you, the
Yeah,
purists.
definitely. Yeah.
Oh my, that's the question to me though. What is my outlining style?
Yeah.
Um, Before I even get to that, I always try to understand what the beginning and the end of the story is and the arc.
Oh.
You know, and then you determine how long do you want it to be, what are all the eras and blah blah blah. And and then I try to slice it up into, beginning, middle, and end, and then slice those up. And a lot of times I'll use just a bunch of post-it notes or a journal, just writing down ideas in the early stages. And then when I get to the point where I want to commit, I try to figure out what the high level chapter titles are for the book, because that helps me determine what goes in the chapter. In all my books, I have chapter titles. And,
Hmm.
I know people think that's for the reader. It's actually for me to figure out what I'm writing about. And once I do that, I get these large post-it, no, I mean, these large sheets of paper. You might be able to see them on my wall behind me.
Yeah.
Um, I just go to FedEx or Kinko's or wherever you like to go, Office Depot, and I get those. I put the chapter title on the top, and then I stick it to the wall, and then I start writing what happens in that chapter, trying to go in chronological order. But sometimes I'll just cross through something, or I'll get a post-it note and stick it in the middle and saying, "Oh, add this." And then I do all the chapters, and I might add one in the middle, and then I move one around. and then I try to read through the story at that high level from
Oh.
beginning to end and see if I've got it,
Hmm.
you know? And from there, take each one of those and I turn it into a slide in PowerPoint.
Hmm.
And now I put in a timeline, which is, a bunch of boxes that go from left to right
Hmm.
that indicate what happens in that chapter.
Hmm.
And that really helps me with writer's block,
Oh.
because sometimes I'll be typing and I'll get through a scene and I go, now what happens next? And I'll go back to that timeline. It will nudge me forward.
Hmm.
And that's how I keep going. And
Oh.
sometimes I get stuck somewhere and I'll just take that day and say, let's redo the outlines. Because sometimes something happened in a previous chapter and it doesn't jive with what I'm typing now. And then I want to readjust all the timelines.
Hmm.
But when I do that, I can see what's happening when and with whom. And I can tell if I'm spending too much time on person X versus person Y. And that's basically it. So I take the overall timeline in the first PowerPoint and then a chapter for each one of the others. And then I also use the PowerPoint to have a mock-up of my cover. I
Hmm.
usually take a bunch of images off the internet and I say, this is the kind of cover I want. They give it to an artist and they do an amazing job with it. I
Hmm.
mean, the last one, Killing Heroes, if you could see the sketch I gave the person and the cover they gave me, it was just like, wow. It was, oh,
Happy to check it out if you got it.
I don't know if you can
Yeah.
see.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's you can see the Capitol building with these eerie eyes at the top, and there's a policewoman
Hmm.
standing in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
So,
basically my view from my window.
oh,
But
that's
I
well,
gave the person such a weird looking sketch, and I said I want it to happen at night because there's this alley scene, blah blah blah. And they came back with that, and they had this sort of alien writing on it. And I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's some of the writing from the alien." I
hmm.
mean, I didn't even mention that, and the person just put it down, and it's like it just worked,
Hmm.
So I love this guy, and I also try to get an artist from the setting.
Oh,
So this guy was from DC. Crazy Rich Aliens was a Singaporean artist. And for the next one, I plan to get an artist from Senegal because the story starts in Senegal, Western Senegal. Matter of fact, it was called Senegambia at the time in the
really?
early 1800s.
Senegambia.
Yes. Weird bit of history. And so I make this funny statement in the book from a newscaster from BBC saying, after this pandemic came out, my geography has just improved 100%. And that's the way I go about writing this book, because I'm writing about so many countries and so many cities. And I know all the stands now, Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yeah. It
Hmm.
was because that's how the virus was spreading through those. I shouldn't talk too much about my book because it's coming out soon, but
Oh, well, readers interested should check it out. I definitely am going to check it out. You mentioned, what is it? Yeah. Oh, about artists. So I just thought I kind of did something similar by moving to Japan because I actually moved here because I had 10 novels and they were going to be
wow,
mangas. And I wanted my mangas to be drawn by someone who is Japanese because
there
I
you go.
Japanese characters. That's why I came to Japan and
Yeah.
to find an illustrator. And I got one working on my manga. But when that's done, I'm going to move back to America. So, yeah.
I have not thought of that. Now, I did go to Singapore for
Yeah.
2 weeks to do research for my book, and I'm planning on going to Senegal in September.
Hmm. Okay. Well, let me know how that goes. Um, with uh, with what you were saying, you were talking a little about writer's block. Why don't you expand on that?
Well, it happens to everybody, and I think it's probably most prevalent at the beginning and the ending of the story. And you've seen movies where you say, man, that ending sucked. What happened? You know, and I don't want to be that guy where someone's reading the book and go, oh, that sucks. And so I really go crazy over the ending. Now, when I get writer's block in the middle, it's more about how do I want the story to progress, and it's not that important which way it goes. And so I tend to go back to my timeline to say what was supposed to happen next. And if I can't work it out that way, then I tend to just take a walk. I mean, DC is a great walking city, and at night it's quiet, there's no one around, and it's really safe because
Hmm,
downtown there's police everywhere.
good.
And I just walk sort of in the darkness around the National Mall and just try to push ideas out there, you know? It's like I have this huge blank slate and all the room in the world to spin around and just create the story in front of me, you know? Or I'll just take a couple of days off and read a book. I read S.A. Cosby book, and it really helped me a lot.
Hmm.
You know, his latest book. Um, and I'm blanking on it. It's on my shelf in front of me, but it's too far away to read
Hmm.
the title. But his latest book is just, I don't know, the way he describes scenes and people, and it just made me think differently about my approach to writing. And so it sort of loosens me up and reinvigorates me to read other people's work, you know. And so I do that on occasion. Um, the guy who wrote Dark Matter, Crouch,
Yeah.
he has a series. I I remember I bought his book when it came out, and I texted him on it and said, "This is really wonderful. I hope that they make a movie out of it." He's, "Oh yeah, me too. I'd love to see." And now it's a TV series.
Hmm.
That was like 3 years ago. And I read his other book that came out, Upgrade.
Hmm.
Oh, fabulous. I know that's going to be another movie. This guy he's a really great writer. I enjoy his work.
Bleed.
Sorry?
All the sinners bleed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
I mean, it's such a weird title too,
yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
Woo.
Hmm. Yeah.
So thought-provoking. It to me, it's like your muscles get all tight and they can't think because they're all twisted up. And so you got to read and just sort of relaxes them. And all of a sudden, this new energy or thoughts start flowing through your head and said, wow, why didn't I think of that? You know, and then you can get back into the groove again. You feel more energized. And the timeline helps me wonder what happens next because I put a little box on the screen and say, you know, Chantel is going to do this next in New Orleans. And I go, how is she going to do that? And I just as much as the reader, I want to find out what happens next in the story. And
Hmm.
sometimes that's what pushes me to work late into the night when I shouldn't, should be getting sleep.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to let your character do the walking and just
Yeah. And
tell their story while they tell.
if you're not getting excited about the story, it's hard for the reader to. And you're talking about the character. Some people say the book writes itself or the characters write the story. And I had in Alien Hitman, I had a female mob boss who was trying to climb up the ladder, but of course, sexism, misogyny, the guys didn't want her up there.
Hmm.
And so she decided to kill him off,
Oh,
kill her way to the top. And they found out about it and they decided to set an ambush and kill her. And
no.
she was supposed to die. And I had written her to die. And then all of a sudden she says, no, I can get out of this. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the story changed and she survived
Hmm.
by saving one of the guys that came to kill her because there was two groups. I guess it's like the Keanu Reeves story. There's always 1,000 people trying to kill somebody.
Hmm.
And so these two groups get there at once. And
Hmm.
one's trying to kill the other group so they can kill her.
Oh.
And then she kills this guy. And then he says, well, I I can't kill you now. You just saved my life.
Hmm.
and I was just fascinated by the fact that that happened to me because I heard other people say those kinds of things,
Hmm.
and it's like, okay, that's how it happens. You know, the character says, think about this angle. I could live and I could do better things. So
Yeah.
I let her live.
Yeah, I got a book like that where a character was gonna drown in the end, and then the character was saying to me, no, because the narrator is a dead guy and he's watching his best friends. And the character told me, no, I'm gonna talk to the dead guy and let him pass through, and then I'm gonna recover. And I go, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird how those things happen.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of that circular motion where the character ended up helping the dead character pass through. I go, that was good how it fit. Yeah. So I hear
Excellent.
you. That's I bet you got a lot of advice. Why don't you tell viewers 42 words of
Oh, you know, I resist trying to be that guy.
it?
You know, I love the 42 word challenge. I thought that was fabulous. But inspiring people in 42 words. I mean, I'll read what I wrote,
Okay.
but I always in a shorter version is just when you can't think, do. When you can't do, think. You know?
Hmm.
Um, someone gave me that bit of wisdom some time ago. Here's my advice I wrote down. If you have a bold idea for improving the world, or a horrible mental burden you wish to release, or a meaningful experience you wish to persist after you're gone, write it down. Then share it with readers for their edification. So another one of my pet peeves is people who just complain a lot and don't do anything.
Hmm.
You know, you don't like the system, then vote. You don't like your car, get a new car. You don't like your furniture, just sell it, get rid of it, you know? And if you see trash in the ground and it annoys you, maybe just pick it up. It's okay. It'll
That's
make you
really
feel
good
better.
advice.
It makes me feel better when I do those kinds of things.
Yeah. Do you know about the
So,
toilet god in Japan? Didn't mean to cut you off, but do you know about that? There's a toilet god in Japan, and it gives people good luck when they volunteer and clean a toilet in public.
wow.
So I think
No,
America needs that too, is some kind of toilet or trash god. Letting
yeah,
be And it works because like people who own companies will clean toilets in public stalls, and they think that they're getting good luck, and that's why they're rich.
that's a bit extreme. To me, I would do it because it's the right thing to do, not because I think I'm going to get rich.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have to say that Japan takes it to a level that I find impressive and awe-inspiring. I was walking through the subway once, and this lady was carrying some things, and her thumb got caught on her necklace when she was trying to adjust things, and she
Oh,
broke this necklace with black beads, and they just went everywhere. And
oh.
everyone just stopped and started picking up beads for her.
Hmm.
In America, they would be like, move, lady, and
Yeah.
stepping on her beads. And I mean, I have two others quick stories.
Oh, happy to
It
hear
was
it.
like midnight. It was dark, and there was no one around, no cars, and there was this tiny alley, you know, between buildings, really tiny. You could almost jump across it. It was so small.
Hmm.
And there was this lady and her son waiting for the pedestrian light to turn green. And I
Yeah.
was like, what are you waiting? It's an alley. There's no cars anywhere. But they were just standing there like, you know, we can't move until that light turns. And so I stood with them. I thought maybe they're waiting on a bus and I couldn't see it. And it turned green and then they walked across and I go, oh my goodness, that is discipline.
Well,
You would never, you would never get an American to do that.
yeah, but I bet if that lady's kid wasn't with her, she would have crossed. She was doing,
I don't know. I don't know. The
well, I
other
don't
one
know
is
for sure, but
this
I know,
one you must get. They don't do change.
yeah,
Tips.
they don't.
Don't. I I was at a hotel, was checking in, I was off the flight, was tired, and something cost what 5.99 yen, and the change was a penny. I
Yeah.
mean, literally, it was a penny, the lowest amount you could possibly have in yen. And I just grabbed my luggage and stuff, and I think it was I was just getting a coffee and a donut or something to survive through the night. And I
Hmm.
was rushing toward the elevator, and this woman rushes at me, and
Hmm.
I'm already gone, and she's running down the hallway, and I hear her feet stomping, and I look back, and she rushes up, and she drops to her knees, and she holds this silver tray up to me with a penny on it.
Yeah, you left it. That's your money.
Man, I felt like such a schmuck. I'm like, I'm making this lady run down the hallway to give me a penny.
Oh, well, I did
And
it for two. So it happens to all of us at first. Because that happened in a store when I left, and this dude chasing me. Same thing.
and and you mentioned that luck thing. If that goes back to bad luck, I
Hmm.
can see that.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like you stole that guy's penny, and all day long it's going to be in your head, and it's like I don't want that.
exactly.
So
And
but I just find that impressive in a world that people are constantly stealing cars out in front of me.
hmm,
That someone would sit there and say, "I won't take anything, even a penny from anyone."
yeah, and that's how it is here. I've even seen them protect life like insects, and
Yeah,
they won't sit in a chair if a bug's there, not because they're scared of the bug, because they don't want to disturb it.
isn't
Uh,
that something?
yeah, and that's what I've been here 10 years, along with getting the illustrator thing. It really captured me. But
Wait, you've been there 10 years?
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Man, you're a slow writer. I
Well,
thought
actually, the
you.
story is written. It's been about getting the illustrator, the right one. I've been searching, and I got stuck working too because I had to work to live here. And so I was searching for the right illustrator and found one. She's doing it, and by next year we'll have the first book ready. So pretty
That
happy.
is discipline, man.
But you're right. I'm slow at this writing stuff. I mean, how long's it been with the anthologies in 2018? So finally
Wow.
getting it out.
But 10 years in one city just to write a
Oh, no,
story.
no, not
That's
not a city. I've
impressive.
moved all around Japan.
Okay.
So I've lived in more places in Japan than a lot of Japanese people I know. So it's kind of
Wow. I
fun.
like Kyoto a lot too.
Oh yeah, that's where I work. It's a beautiful place. Yeah,
Marvelous.
yeah. Do you know
Now I need to get
Kurasuma?
back there.
Uh, are you familiar with the name Kurasuma? It's an area in Kyoto.
No, no.
Okay, well that's where I work. But anyway, taking a lot of your time. Let's talk about social media. Do you have any that you'd like to share with viewers?
Well, in general, J Cannon author is how to find me. I have a Twitter account that I use a lot, and also my jcannonauthor.com site, which is where I put all my book information. I mean, I do have an Instagram and a Facebook, but I really don't spend too much time there.
Hmm.
Um, on Facebook, I'm just JC Cannon. And I also have a Crazy Rich Aliens page there. But I don't do much book selling. That's where I usually hang out with friends and family. All my author stuff is really on Twitter or X now.
Oh, okay.
Don't get that, but Instagram, I don't do any. I'm not one of those picture takers. Come look at this picture thing. No, I just give out information when I have it. I share jobs and stuff.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn too, but that's all technical stuff from Microsoft days.
Hmm.
So if people want to find me online, it's really going to be Twitter or jcannonauthor.com.
Okay. Well,
And jcannonauthor is the Twitter
yeah,
handle too.
you'll get a few readers probably from this because you got a lot to say. I hope at least that a few people at least reach out and look at your work, and also
Yeah, I
Cosby's.
sort of screwed things up. I had my own Twitter account, and then I went through some sort of life change, and I had to hide out for a while. And so I closed all my accounts, and then I lost them because someone else took it.
Oh,
And then I lost my thousands of followers, and I hope to eventually get them back.
hmm. Yeah, that kind of thing's a process. But I hope you get them back too. Anyway, thank you for your time. And I also have to thank Canva for all these photos. But thank you for coming and talking today.
Oh, it's been fun. You're a hoot, man. If you're ever in DC, let's hang out.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to, and I'll let you know.